Hey. Hey! Listen! Hey, you gonna get up? How long are you gonna lie there? You have a review to do, you know. Can I have your liver for science? You even alive? You haven't blinked, man. Oh, you just blinked. Alright, you're alive. Well, have fun with that.
I will turn you into a down comforter, you useless.
Oh Lord, Kingdom Hearts. Where to start with this one? Well, you all probably know it from the outside. Even if you don't know the name, you would probably recognize it as that ridiculous over-the-top game where the edgy, overly designed Final Fantasy characters cross over into the Disney worlds. It's the game that sounds like it would never work, and it's really stupid on the outside, and then is wildly popular. And having now played the first game in the series, I can definitely see why. Though that statement is going to come with some, I feel like, quite controversial opinions among those who love this game down the line. But we'll get there. When you first start the game, there's a few things you're going to notice right away. Firstly, the clunky combat. Don't worry, that won't change for the entirety of the game. For the time, it was fairly standard. If you've ever played an RPG like Tales of Symphonia, then you'll feel somewhat at home with the way the combat feels. Simple combos that either work or are interrupted, repeated ad nauseum until the enemy dies. I can't say it was particularly unique, and it just feels rough today. It suffices, but I would have expected a bit of an upgrade since it's a 1.5 remaster I was playing and that came out in 2013. But hey, I hope you like it, because the combat grind is a million times more constant in this game than in just about any other RPG I've played. It tried to do something innovative for the first time by letting you explore a more open world style map. Instead of running into random encounters that drag you into fights like most other RPGs, you're always on the map you want to explore, and the enemies constantly spawn around you until you've defeated enough for the room to stop spawning more until you leave and come back. On the surface, this is a very neat idea that helps you to gain an extra layer of immersion into the world. In practice, it's a triple layer of rough, like wiping with 20 grit sandpaper.
Oh God, the blood won't go down!
The sort of smooth paper at the back is the exploration itself. As I said, the room will reset enemy spawns if you exit the area and return. Well, you're exploring and you aren't sure where to go, so you're probably going to be leaving and returning to the small rooms that the game builds its environments with constantly as you solve where to go next. On some maps, you'll leave a room via one door so that you can platform to a new door you couldn't reach before that will take you to a new door in the room you came from, respawning all of the enemies once again, even if you know where you're going. The grit of the sandpaper that makes it painful is the excessive tedium of the combat. Here is 30 seconds of uninterrupted combat. Congratulations, you are now familiar with 87% of the game. Just keep on hammering the X button until the bad things stop. Every now and then, do a dodge roll to reposition, but just keep hammering away, because that's your only reliable chance of deflecting an oncoming attack thanks to the delay between when you hit the button and when you actually swing the iconic Keyblade. When your health gets low, heal, and then repeat. I wish I was exaggerating, because the combat feels like there's some room for strategy and options, but no, not really. When I couldn't beat the secret bosses at the end of the game, I asked chat what I was doing wrong. Where were the bosses' openings? How was I interacting with them incorrectly? Those are their openings. I just need to grind until I can smash my face on the X button and take their hits until they end up dead instead of me. The combat does show promise, but it must have evolved and improved over the games. Otherwise, I can't imagine why this has held up, or is even popular now. In that sense, I guess it kind of reminds me of the Devil May Cry games, in that I couldn't really see what was so great in the first game that spawned such a prolific and beloved series. Please don't say it gets worse like DMC supposedly does. I'm still confused on what was going on with that. Then there's the worst factor. That hand that grabs the sandpaper and drags it over your exposed anus with maximum pressure exerted. You cannot interact with anything in the world while a member of your party is in combat. So unless the only thing you had to do in a room was to walk uninterrupted through an open doorway and ignore all of the enemies, you are now banned from exploring until you have spent your prerequisite minutes hammering on X. You can see the fun exploration part of the world that you need to interact with, but you're not allowed to do more than look at it until you finish doing your chores. What was the point of making me feel more immersed in the world only to rip that immersion away at every turn? Some worlds only let you leave an area by interacting with something too, which just turns the gameplay into enter room, fight everything in the room pointlessly, finally go to next room, repeat for 3 or 4 rooms until you get where you're going. The next thing you'll notice right from the start of the game is how stiff, unresponsive, and unnatural the controls feel. Oh, especially the jumping. The jumping was so bad, I genuinely thought it was only there as an extra thing the game would throw at you that, it didn't expect you to use. Oh, you poor naive otter. There's a lot of platforming in this game. Just like the combat, it feels real stiff and unintuitive for, the first half of the game, actually. As you pass the halfway point, your jump becomes double its height and feels easier to control. And then a bit later, you can unlock the ability to glide in the air, and everything feels so much better. It's as if the extra jump height and the glide were what the entire game was built around. And then it just made parts capable of being completed with the awful starting jump. It makes the first half of the game incredibly frustrating and a near constant chore to explore. But how rough that was makes the ending of the game as you backtrack and finish your exploration of the world feel wonderful throughout as you traverse back through areas that you once struggled under. Finally, you'll notice nothing makes sense. You're probably deeply confused unless you're deeply familiar with the story and lore already. Why am I deciding what I'm afraid of and what I want to do in the world? What is this little area and why is it here? What did I actually do by giving up the sword? Just what? What is going on? Well, for that answer, let's check in with Endgame Otter. He's already finished everything and done his end-of-game research, so he should understand exactly what's going on in any competent video game. Sir, what can you tell us? Future Otter? Yeah, don't ask me to explain anything at all in regards to this story. Every time I thought I was getting a handle on the story, it immediately became apparent just how much I didn't know that I didn't know. Just get used to the feeling, live in the moment. The game says go to a place, feel grateful. It was extremely common for what you were supposed to do in order to progress the story trigger and actually do anything in the game to be unclear and nebulous at the best of times. Most of the time, if you're stuck, just start running into each room on the entire map, whether there's any reason for you to go there or not. Eventually, something will happen. And if you feel like you're starting to get a handle on the story like I did, just wait. The ending will let you know on no uncertain terms that you understood absolutely nothing about anything. And then the secret ending will let you know that you didn't even understand what you didn't understand. If you are coming here for comprehension, move along, Johnny. Most of the strength in the game comes from using the iconic Disney world. Controversial statement number 1. If Kingdom Hearts was not letting you explore and interact with beloved Disney characters, it would have died on its first outing. The joy of the world itself and getting to see and work with the characters that made up our childhoods is what makes up for the clunky dialogue, confusing mess of a story, and rough controls. And yeah, I'm not too proud to say that it does exactly that. Just hearing some of these voices in a new story coming together gave me the same sort of excitement that the after credits scene in Iron Man kicked off for the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. Hades, Maleficent, Jafar, so many of the great villains all in one place. Where was Pete, though? The classic nemesis of Mickey in a game where Mickey is the king? This seems like the biggest possible oversight. Then the chosen worlds even included were from so many of my favorite movies. Alice in Wonderland and Hercules? Such great Disney classics that I feel like get overlooked for a lot of the other titles. Even worlds that I wasn't as big a fan of their movies were still a blast to actually feel like I was getting to explore. Like, I'm not a big fan of Tarzan, but I still was thrilled to explore the world. In contrast, though, we have controversial statement the second. Final Fantasy brings nothing to the table. It provides Riku's look, a lot of obnoxious emo angst, and the banal dialogue of hearts and darkness. While play a drinking game, every time a character says heart or darkness, take a shot. You could play with milk and probably get drunk. But genuinely, what do the Final Fantasy characters bring to the table that a new character or even a Disney character couldn't have? Maybe it's just because I don't know the story of the later games, but they just don't add anything. I thought Ansem, the big bad of this game, was at least a Final Fantasy character, but when I tried to look up what game he was from, no, he's brand new. The only FF characters are Moogles, Sid, 2 characters from 7, and 2 characters from 8. Wow. Seriously, wow. Their impact on the story meant less than the fairy godmother in reality. They could have easily replaced Aerith with a new character, or someone from a Disney World who was caring. What if you replaced her with Jim's mother from Treasure Planet? Replace Emo McGee with John Smith. Cloud could literally be anyone. He's only there because 7 is the only actually iconic character Square's got in that franchise, since every other Final Fantasy protagonist group is fairly interchangeable to the outside world. That's also why the Final Fantasy worlds suck. Traverse Town, the most boring, pointless part of the game that you only ever return to because you're required to find the displaced characters that live there. What if instead Traverse Town was a darker version of Toontown, similar to what you see in Epic Mickey? It would make more sense why you go there first after leaving Mickey's castle, rather than, whoa, Sora ran into Donald and Goofy here because magic of hearts. Hollow Bastion is easily the most boring area, with the long waiting on platforms, moving from place to place, and clearing out room after room of enemies in order to be allowed to interact with one thing, all the while you're battling right next to a cliff that can send you back to the start of the area at a moment's notice if the clunky combat controls pull you over the edge with an auto combo. Even then, you don't need to try and claim the area as a Final Fantasy area, because it doesn't feel like one. It feels like it's Maleficent's castle. Heck, it feels like it belongs in the Beauty and the Beast world that the Beast arrives from, more than it feels like it fits with Final Fantasy's cast. Oh, but how could I forget the biggest thing you would lose if Final Fantasy wasn't involved? Hello. That music is great, though. That literally didn't even damage him. I couldn't possibly replace him. That's right. I went there. Final Fantasy doesn't bring anything to the table that Disney itself could not have done with their own characters more impactfully and better represented. The only problem was Disney couldn't have made this game anywhere near the quality that it was, and Square wanted to give their OCs time in the limelight. But Square brought something else with them, the grind. 99 missing puppies scattered in 33 chests around the world. Finding them just rewards you with pieces for your spaceship that, I'm sorry, Geppetto, what is this ship? Geppetto! You insane bastard! Why is my only gun on the side of the ship? So go back out of this ship. Wait, fuck, keep it 1 second. Down. How much damage on that ship? I'll grab that one. Oh, I'm here. Donk. There it is! I made it! In this stupid ship! I was able to fly through one of the hardest gummy ship sections without being able to shoot anything at all and with small engines. The fighting that I've been talking about. The grind to gain levels. If you want the secret ending, you'd better grind for rare item drops to synthesize items. To a certain extent, that's because at its core this was meant to be an RPG. And that's what RPG means to some devs. Rabid, pernicious grind. Most of these complaints are part of the time the game came out. Controls weren't as polished as they are now. Most games with combos felt clunky at best. Bringing it up once again, but the first Devil May Cry title came out about 2 years earlier, and comparing both of their combo systems, yeah, you can definitely see the improvement from the one to Kingdom Hearts. But the problem with it to me was it's not from that era, it's the 1.5 remix from 13 years down the line. You know, the same year we got BioShock Infinite, Deadpool, Metal Gear Rising, Aliens, Colonial... maybe the remake isn't that bad after all. It just feels like nothing was done to warrant a 1.5 title. The game shows its age and is rough around the edges. I'm torn on whether to recommend that you go back and play it if, like me, you hadn't already. 37 hours is a long time to hammer an X button mindlessly. Its visuals don't look that updated from basic PS2 graphics. What did you do to this game that made it 1.5 exactly? The flaws really show through. But that Disney joy also shows through. Each world, for the most part, manages to capture that feeling of the movie. Tarzan's emphasis on the heart and emotional connections between people. Nightmare Before Christmas's innocent horror clashing with real evil. Alice in Wonderland's utter confusion and chaos and ridiculous aspects. I think only Hercules and Pinocchio didn't really have their themes come across, since Hercules was reduced to a coliseum without room for the heart of the movie, and Pinocchio was just running around Monstro with a few weird-looking rooms, a boss, and then out you go until you have to come back to hunt puppies. Oh, and obviously Traverse Town and Hollow Bastion, as I said, but we're not counting them. Exploring these worlds is, at its best, so immersive that you almost forget the controls are clunky. There's only one truly bad world out of the entire lot, and that's The Little Mermaid. The entire thing makes the controls everywhere else feel wonderful. Three-dimensionality does not work for this universe, and when the entire progression solution is grab a dolphin, something you would never realize exists unless you clear every single enemy out of an enormous area, then swim up to a dolphin that looks like a background element like a rock or a piece of coral except that it's moving, yeah, I'm sure it doesn't help that I kind of hate the movie, but like I said earlier, I'm not a fan of Tarzan and I enjoyed that world. But when the game is bad, it's really bad. When I was writing up my notes and putting everything together for the initial script, I listed Hollow Bastion as the worst level. because the Little Mermaid level was so actually bad that I had scrubbed it out of my brain as being part of this otherwise enjoyable game, and it just kind of partitioned it off as something else entire and separate. Falling off a platform you worked so hard to reach will leave you rage quitting because loading back into a save point is easier than working your way back up Hollow Bastion. And Pooh, oh my beloved Winnie the Pooh, why?
I don't want his mother to see him this way. Look how they massacred my boy.
Hearing Jim Cummings' iconic voice deliver that opening dialogue when you first meet Winnie the Pooh broke my heart. It was so touching, easily the best delivered and well-acted voice work in the entire game, and I would expect nothing less from one of the most incredible voice actors of all time. I grew up on Pooh more than any other of the Disney properties, but the 100 Acre Wood was such a bad world. I wanted to love it because the concept, save Rabbit's garden from Tigger, bouncing with the same stripy miscreant in Roo, helping Pooh get honey from the honey tree. These were the adventures that little baby Otter had always imagined, and now jaded adult Otter was getting to really experience them. And sure, they might have never lived up to what baby Otter imagined, but I would have expected to have given them the rosiest of glasses. And instead, okay, I won't mince words, I kind of wish that I had never experienced them. It's just mini-games. Awful, unclear, horrible excuses for mini-games. I guess the final question is this. The game is clunky and dated, and the re-release for 1.5 Remix just highlights how out of place and fairly unacceptable in a modern era the gameplay is. The levels that are bad are really bad, and make me ask why I would put up with ever playing this game a second time having finished it, especially when the story's hot only because the trash can is shooting gouts of flame high enough into the night sky to catch the neighbor's attention. But it gets me excited, really excited for the next game, and the heart of the game cannot be denied. Can the love and spirit behind a game make up for the rough situation? And can a lot of that roughness be excused by its original release date, even if the 1.5 remix somewhat negates that release date? I think yes. If you want to watch someone else play it while you do something else, that might honestly be the better way to experience it. But at the same time, it was enjoyable enough to just barely hold up. This had just better be up to something with a real payoff and story connection, rather than just turning its own butthole into an MC Escher landscape with a head peeking through.
Thank you all for watching another one of my episodes. Felt like this was a really interesting game to work on the review for. And we have a couple more very interesting games coming up. So stick around, stay tuned, very wide smorgasbord coming up, but the only way you'll know is if you subscribe, hit that bell, and spread the word to other people so that they can hear the good word of the peepo. I mean the otter, definitely the otter. Well, have a great day, and until the next time, remember, life is always another game waiting to be discovered.